still have everybody. Right, well, we're here at St James's Hospital, which in 1916 was the South Dublin Union. The South Dublin Union was a workhouse for the poor and infirm of Dublin City. And in fact, at the time, it housed approximately, between staff and patients, there was about 3,500 people based here on the site. Just as James's Hospital today is a large site of about 50 acres, the South Dublin Union was also 50 acres in size. So it was quite a big site, stretching from here across to Rialto on the far side. Right, the garrison here, the commandant in charge of the garrison was Eamon Cant, but there was also a sub-garrison which was Rose Distillery, and if you look down the road here and you see that building there with the sort of with the windows on the side, that's where Rose Distillery was. And there was a small detachment was sent from the South Dublin Union to hold Rose Distillery, but however, because it wasn't in a strategic location, they eventually moved back up into the South Dublin Union, and some of them went on to Marrowbone Lane Distillery, which is our next stop after here. This complex was quite a strategic location, similar to the Mendicity Institution, because it's here at its main entrance. It overlooked Houston Station down behind us here. Richmond Barracks is just about half a mile down the road at Inchicore. And you also had the Royal Hospital in Kilmainham. And in fact, if those buildings weren't there, you would see the top of the Royal Hospital just behind here. During Easter week, the British Army used the Royal Hospital to fire across into the South Dublin Union at the volunteers from the Royal Hospital. The fighting here in the South Dublin Union was very significant. In particular, it was very intense, and it was basically urban guerrilla warfare. Because the way that the South Dublin Union was set out, it was a whole load of different buildings with little alleyways, courtyards, then large amounts of green space, then more sort of different houses, accommodation, hospitals, churches. So the fighting took place, a lot of the fight was hand-to-hand, close quarters fighting, basically as each building was taken and retaken back. So the fighting, as I say, during the week was very intense. The total number of volunteers that held this site, which as I said was 50 acres, was approximately 100 volunteers, and they were led by Eamon Cant. His second in command was Cathal Brewer. And as people may be aware, Cathal Brewer, during the fight for the South Dublin Union, sustained very significant injuries, and in fact at one stage he was left to single-handedly hold off the British advance into one of the buildings. In the course of that, he was hit by injured by an exploding hand grenade, and he sustained in total 25 injuries, one of which actually severed an artery. He did survive. He was evacuated from here before the surrender. The British thought he was so badly injured, they said, look, this guy won't survive. But as people will be aware, he did survive. He went on to serve in Dáil Éireann, and he was eventually murdered by Free State troops during the Civil War, and he was murdered down O'Connell Street. The force that was against the volunteers here was approximately 20 times their number. So there was approximately over 2,000 British soldiers attacked the South Dublin Union from various locations, from the Rialto side and from this side. And just, Oisin, I don't know if you have the... Where's Oisin? Oh, it's gone. Yeah, once again, there's a photograph going around, and the photograph is of the front of the building here. So this new building, which is Trinity College. You'd see in the picture some of the buildings down at the right-hand side down here are in that picture. And the picture shows what was the main entrance to the South Dublin Union and what it looked like. I think that photograph was taken would have been in the 1940s, but that is what the building here would have looked like. Right, yeah, what we're going to do next is we're going to go in. There is a plaque, unlike the other locations that we're visiting, the Mendicity Institution And the next one, which is Marrowbone Lane, there is actually a plaque dedicated to that notes the location in relation to the 1916 rising inside. We're going to go in, we'll have a look at that. We'll have a look at a couple of the original buildings. Now you'll be able to see the buildings. Any of the stone buildings in there would have been buildings that were originally there and were involved or were held by the volunteers in the Easter Rising. But because obviously it's a hospital, I'm not going to use the PA system, you know. So in a minute we'll go in. I suppose just to note, as I said, Eamon Cant was the commandant of the South Dublin Union. The South Dublin Union, there was a couple of other locations as well, apart from Rose Distillery across the way here. Where the function is tonight in the Pimlico pub, anybody that's going to it, if you stand outside the Pimlico pub and look up to the right to RD Street, that's the location of Watkins Brewery. And Watkins Brewery was held by Con Colbert, who was executed for his part in the Easter Rising. But as with Rose Distillery, Watkins Brewery in RD Street was deemed not to be strategic, and it was only held by the volunteers for, I think, one day. Eamon Cant himself was executed on the 8th of May 1916, aged 34. In one of his last written messages before his execution, Eamon Cant said, "I leave for the guidance of other Irish revolutions who may tread the path which I have trod this advice: never to treat with the enemy, never to surrender at his mercy, but to fight to a finish." So as I say, we're just going to go briefly into the hospital for a minute, and we'll come back out and we're going to head up to Marrowbone Lane Distillery after that.